Okay, so let me tell you what the plan is. All right, some of this is going to duplicate what is written in the shiur description, but since some people didn't read that, then I'll just share it. So basically, a while ago, months ago, then we were going to do a Q&A, and Tamar sent me some questions in advance. Okay, and I'll just share. She gave me permission to share these questions. So let me just share the screen here. Okay, so Tamar said, do you know of a good shiur for an outline of the basic halachos of Lashon Hara? I realized that as opposed to something like Hilchos Shabbos, I really don't even know how to tell if something is a shaila in that area, meaning a halachic question. I think that most of the guidance I've gotten about Lashon Hara has been either general philosophy or non-halachic advice about the ideal practices, and those are not always the most helpful for real-time decisions. Ideally, I'd like something that goes over general halachic parameters of Lashon Hara and perhaps other forms of usher speech. Here are a few examples of things I don't know the answer to. Example one, how can you tell if a statement is Lashon Hara? Any principles, rules of thumb, or even pointers to topics in this area would be great. I have a vague sense about that Lashon Hara is bad, true statements about another person, maybe only a Jewish person, but that's about it. Example two, if you are in a conversation with someone and they start talking negatively about someone else, and for the sake of this question, assume you can tell they are speaking Lashon Hara, are you obligated to either interrupt them and change the topic or leave the conversation? Are you required to do it immediately? Does it change anything if your actions will embarrass the speaker? Three, if someone has a fight with someone else and wants your advice to help them make peace, but in the process will have to tell you about bad things the other person did, are you allowed to have that conversation? And four, when it comes to deciding whether or not something is Lashon Hara, does it matter how the statement affects you personally? Could saying something be Lashon Hara for me, but not for someone else? Or is it inherent in the statement and or how the subject feels about it? Okay, so these are very important questions, all right? And I've been meaning to, so I read this essay, and I'll tell you the name of the essay, and maybe I'll even, one second. Brown Principles. So it's called, it's by someone named Professor Benjamin Brown of Hebrew University of Jerusalem. It's called From Principles to Rules and From Musar to Halacha, the Chavetz Chaim's rulings on libel and gossip. And it's a long essay. It's, well, the PDF is 87 pages, okay? Essentially it is, his thesis is that the Chavetz Chaim, in writing the book called the Chavetz Chaim, Rav Yisrael Meir Kagan, same author as the Mishnah Berurah, by writing his book called the Chavetz Chaim about Lashon Hara, he changed the nature of the halachos of Lashon Hara, and he did it intentionally. Okay, so I really wanted to give a shiur on that because I feel like it's not only is it something that people are not aware of, but it is a meta halachic issue that interests me very much about that phenomenon in areas of halacha, about like halachifying something. So I wanted to give a shiur on that and to use that as the framework for addressing tomorrow's questions. However, I realize that many people are coming from where Tamar is coming from, including Tamar, which is that like, you know, we've never seen an actual overview of the halachos of Lashon Hara, or we've seen it, but we're not familiar with it, or we're not fluent in it. So I figured it would be a good idea to start off with a basic overview and then proceed from there. Okay. And the only overview that existed prior to the Chavetz Chaim in a halachic fashion is the Rambam in Hilchos Deos. And this may come as a shock, but one of the things that the Chavetz Chaim, pointed out that prompted him to do this is, there are no halachos of Lashon Hara in the Shulchan Aruch or in the Torah. Okay, and in many halachic codes, there's just no halachos of Lashon Hara. And so the Chavetz Chaim was bothered by that, and rightfully so, that like if this is an actual like Isser D'Oraisa and it's a severe one, why is it not given a halachic treatment? Okay, so the Rambam is really the basis of this, and the Chavetz Chaim used a lot of the Rambam as the platform that he elaborated on, but we're going to really focus on the Rambam. And our goal today is to get a broad overview. That's our first goal of four concepts. Okay, and this, I hope this is not too much. Rechilus, loosely translated as gossip mongering. Lashon Hara, loosely translated as evil or bad speech. Motzi Shemra, which is loosely translated as libel, right? Like no, there's another word for it. Is there another word for it? Okay, fine, libel. Let's say libel, and then say again.
I think that's the right word.
Okay, I think so also. Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe there's another term I'm thinking of. I'm not sure. And then bal lashon hara. Okay, if we can get those four things, great. There's a chance that we will get caught up in Rechilus, because Rechilus is something that not arguably, is primary in the Rambam's thing, and that's actually what the pasuk says. And in preparing for the shiur, I ended up radically updating my understanding of Rechilus, and it's possible we'll just get stuck there, which is not the worst thing in the world. If we get past all this, then we'll go into the full overview, which is just what the Rambam's other halachos of Lashon Hara are. And then the plan is next time I want to go into this Chavetz Chaim thing. Okay. But here's the thing is I want to let this shiur go wherever it goes. So if you have other questions about Lashon Hara, then feel free to ask, because we're not on a timed agenda. And this is a very important topic, which is very multifaceted. So I'm totally fine, going wherever we go. Okay. So let's start off with the pasuk. So the pasuk is in Parshas Kedoshim, in Vayirka 19:16. Lo selech Rachil be'amecha, lo sa'amod al dam re'echa, ani Hashem. Do not go as a gossip monger among your people. Do not stand over the blood of your fellow. I am Hashem. Now, one aspect of the analysis, which I think is very important, which we're not even going to touch, just because it's going to take us too far afield, is analyzing this in context. Okay, this is Parshas Kedoshim, so there's a whole list of mitzvos, and whenever you have a list of parsha with a list of mitzvos, presumably there's going to be some order and some thematic unity that will give insight into the particulars. Okay, so I haven't even engaged in that analysis. Parshas Kedoshim is next week. I was just complaining last night, I think at the end of shiur, about how unfortunate it is that we have only 1 week to do Parshas Kedoshim in terms of the parshios, and in most years it's a double parsha like this year. So I encourage you, maybe this is a good question to focus on when you're doing your parsha next week. Okay, so even though we're going to focus on the Rambam, I want to start off with a Rashi, okay, because Rashi has a lengthy discourse on the word Rachil, okay, and it's a difficult word. So I'm translating it as gossip monger. Rashi is going to give a different translation, but he'll nod to this one. Okay, so Rashi says like this, and I translated this into English because it's long, but I put the Hebrew here anyway. Okay, so he says, "Do not go as a gossip monger. I say that because all those who sow discord between people and who speak lashon hara, okay, that's mishalchim midyanim, okay, people who send forth quarrels, and masapre lashon hara, go into their friends' houses in order to spy out what bad things they can see or hear to tell in the marketplace. Therefore, they are called holche rachil, those who go as gossip mongers, which is the same as holche regila, those who go and spy. Or, okay, I don't know if anyone knows modern French. I don't know exactly how to pronounce this, or if it's even a modern French word, but in Old French, espiment, I don't know how to say it, but you can see the word spy in there, right? The word spy comes from that. A proof for my words, he says, is that we do not find the term Rechilus except in conjunction with halicha, walking or going. For example, lo selech rachil, in our pasuk, do not walk as a gossiper. Or in Mishle, holech rachil, I think it's holech rachil megale sod, one who goes as a gossiper reveals a secret. Or holche rachil nechoshes ubarzel, in Yirmiyahu 6:28, those who go as spies, they are as brass and iron. But other expressions for lashon hara are not written in conjunction with halicha. For example, milushine baseser re'ehu, those who slander their friends and their fellow in secret. Or lashon ramia, deceitful tongue. Or lashon medberes gedolos, from a shiur on Wednesday night, a tongue that speaks haughty things. So he's differentiating between rachil, which is always accompanied with walking, and other types of bad speech, which do not use the word walking. And here comes the crux of his theory. For this reason, I say that the expression holech rachel means holech umeragel. It means going and spying, since the chaf is interchangeable with the gimel. Okay, so he says, rachil, resh chaf lamed, is the same thing as resh gimel lamed. Why? Since all the letters that are produced by the same organs of speech are interchangeable. Bays with pei and vav. Okay, so those are what you call, I'm sure there's fancy linguistic terms for this, but b, p, v are all said with the lips together, or g and k, which is said with the I don't know my terms for the different parts of the speech, or kuf and kaf, okay, which Rashi is only saying because he's Ashkenazic. Really, kuf is pronounced with the back of the throat, the way you're supposed to pronounce it, and kaf is pronounced with the front. Or nun with lamed and resh. I guess with the tongue, or zayin and tzadi. Okay, so likewise, vayiragel ba'avdecha, it also uses the word when it says he spied on your servant. He says implies that he spied me out and explored in order to speak evil about me, or lo ragel al lashono, which means that he has not spied out in order to have evil on his tongue. So Rashi's stance is not primarily that Rachel is a gossip monger. Okay. I should have said this at the beginning, by the way. Monger means merchant. Okay. And the only examples, I don't know why this word fell out of use, but the only examples I can think of when I think of monger is fishmonger, warmonger, and fearmonger. Okay. I don't think we use the word otherwise. If you think of another example, let me know, because those, whenever I've thought about it, those are the only three I can think of. But it means like a merchant. Okay. I don't know if it's relevant to mongrel. So I have no idea. But so Rashi is saying that the primary meaning though is not, and the reason why we get that is because Rochel or Rachil is a Lashon of a merchant. But Rashi is saying that the primary meaning is spying. And then now he's going to address the merchant thing. He says, similarly, the Rochel, the trader, the merchant, or the monger, is one who goes around and searches for, literally spies out all kinds of merchandise. So too, the seller of perfumes, which women use to make themselves beautiful. Okay, that's another example. Avkas Rochel means like a perfume merchant. I forgot what pasuk that is, or phrase that is in Chazal. The seller of perfumes, which women use to make themselves beautiful, is also called a Rochel because he constantly goes about in villages. He's called a Rochel, which has the same meaning as Rogel. So in other words, like this. According to Rashi, the primary meaning of Rachil is a spy, and then merchant is derived from spying because a merchant goes around like looking for wares to buy and sell. Okay, so this is in contrast to the theory that the primary meaning of lo selech Rachil is a merchant. Okay, so I'm trying to say that these are two separate theories about how you translate the pasuk. Okay, so I'm translating as lo selech Rachil, don't go as a gossip monger, which is the primary meaning. Rashi is saying, do not go as a spy, okay, among your people. And the primary meaning is ragel. And it's just that you can interchange the chaf and the gimel. Okay. Any questions on that? That's like our first.
Can you clarify what the distinction, like they seem related to me. Maybe it's just in my intuition, but can you see what the distinction is?
Yeah. So the question is, when you describe someone as doing this sin of Rechilus, what exactly are you describing them as doing? Are you describing them as spying, that they're looking for information to get and then report on? Or are you depicting them as a merchant, that they're looking for things to sell? Okay, and it's a question of what analogous description we are. Everyone holds that this is like an analogous. It's a comparative term, But is the primary like model in our mind a spy, or is it a merchant?
So, like in both cases, they are telling other people whatever they information they gathered, and the question is whether it's for like commerce or for, I don't know what the espionage would be.
Correct.
I don't really see what the espionage would be.
That's part of our question here is what is the difference, or is there a difference? You can say that there's no difference, but I think that there are definitely people who say that Rachel primarily means merchant, and they don't even talk about spying, whereas Rashi makes a big deal about the spying thing. Yeah, Ayala?
And we know that it's specifically talking about like Lashon Hara or like language because Chazal.
Yeah, we're gonna go into that in a little while in the Rambam. Okay. One more part of Rashi. Okay, so the Targum says, I'll just show you the Targum here because I got it. The Targum says something that is funny. Okay. Oops, hold on just a second here. Targum, where are you? Okay, so Targum. Oh, you know what? Did I quote the wrong pasuk? No, I didn't. Okay, it's 19:16. Okay, so he says lo selech Rachil be'amecha. He translates as lo techol kurtzin be'amach, which means do not eat kurtzin among your people. And kurtzin literally, according to Rashi's going to explain, means hints. Do not eat hints among your people. Okay, so the question is like, what is up with that? Why is he using the Lashon of eating? Okay, it's like there's he doesn't say don't walk. He says don't eat. So Rashi is bothered by that. So Rashi says, and this is a funny interpretation, and the translation of the Targum, lo seichel kursin, do not eat hints, has the same meaning as in Sefer Daniel, which is written in Aramaic for the most part, achol kurza be malka. They slandered the Jews to the king. Achlu kurtzeim di Yehudai. They slandered the Jews, or in Brachos, achol kurza be malka. They slandered him to the king. So he says, now I don't know where Rashi's getting this from. It seems to me that people had the custom to eat a little snack in the house of him who listened to their slanderous words. And this served as the final confirmation that his, i.e. the slanderer's statements were well-founded and that he would maintain the truth of them. This snack was called achilas kurtin, the word kurza being connected in meaning with the word karatz for example, in Mishlei, he winks with his eyes. For it is the manner of all who go about as gossip mongers to wink with their eyes and to allude to the words of gossip through innuendo so that other listeners will understand them. Okay, so I don't know if Rashi's getting this from like some sort of historical fact or if he's like saying a conjecture here that what I'm picturing here is I don't know why I'm picturing British ladies with their tea, maybe because the word tea is associated with like gossip in modern lingo, like British ladies going into each other's houses and like saying, oh, did you hear about so-and-so? But instead of like just like gossiping over tea, the acceptance and the consumption of the tea is like a sign that they are buying into the slander or into the slander, okay, or the gossip. Okay, I'm just quoting this not because I understand it, but because Rashi addresses it and I want to like not leave out part of the Rashi. Okay, so that's Rashi. Okay, but now what we're going to do is we're going to read the Rambam, and the Rambam is going to present us with clear categories. Okay, but our job is to understand the categories. Again, that's the primary mission. Now, where do we go in the Rambam? So you would think we go to the Mishnah Torah, which is where we're going to go, but the Rambam wrote the Sefer HaMitzvos as an introduction to the Mishnah Torah. Okay, so he explains in the intro to the Sefer HaMitzvos that he wanted to write a book that is all the halachos for all the mitzvos of the Torah. But then he says, so he was going to write it. That's the Mishnah Torah. He says, I was going to write this book, but then I realized that, I want to be thorough and make sure that I cover all the mitzvahs. So I'm going to make a list of all the Taryag mitzvahs in the beginning of the book so that people will know that I didn't omit even one of them. But he says people are going to look at my list and they will think that I either counted something as a mitzvah that isn't a mitzvah or I omitted something that should have been counted. And the reason they'll think this, okay, and this is, I'm assuming this is not Lashon Hara because the Rambam says it, is he says because the Bahag messed everyone up. Okay, the Bahag is the Baal Halachos Gedolos, who was one of the Gaonim who wrote a book of mitzvos, and the Rambam says that he got a bunch of stuff wrong, and it messed everyone up because his authority was so powerful in people's eyes. Okay, so he says I have to write a book to explain why I'm counting different things as mitzvos, and I'm going to list 14 rules, which I use to count things as mitzvos. For example, you don't count something as a mitzvah if it's derabanan, whereas the Bahag did. Okay, my favorite example of this is the Bahag lists 9 mitzvos for Hanukkah, Ner Hanukkah, and 8 days of Hallel. Okay, and he counts those as mitzvos. And the Rambam says, why would you count derabanans? If you count all the derabanans, you're going to have thousands of mitzvos, And so, or another principle of a rule of the Rambam is he says you don't count something as a mitzvah if it encompasses kol Torah kula. So, for example, Kedoshim Tihiyu, you should be holy, is a description of all the mitzvos of the Torah. So you don't count that as one of Taryag, but the Bahag will count things like that.
When if you're counting mitzvos, does that always mean towards Taryag?
That's a little unclear. The Rambam does. The Ramban mentions in his Hakdama. There's a question. Is Taryag even thing? There's the people kind of talk about Taryag mitzvos as though it's like a unanimous thing, but there's the idea that there are 613 mitzvos stems from one midrash, and if you look at the midrash, it's not even clear that midrash is meant to be taken literally. And you have Rishonim who are like makpid, like the Rambam, that no, there are davka 613. Then there's other Rishonim like the Ibn Ezra or the Ralbag who hold that there are not Ibn Ezra and people that the Ramban quote hold that there are not 613. Okay, and that midrash is either like a different opinion or it's like not literal. And then the Ralbag has the funniest shita, in my opinion. The Ralbag says that there are not 613, and the Rambam got all 14 rules right, but the Rambam misapplied them. And if you count up the mitzvahs according to the Rambam's rules, you'll get a number, but it's not 613, So he holds that the idea of 613 is that there's a definite list of like discrete deoraisas, but it's not 613. That's just like a gematria or something like that, So.
Okay, I have to ask a related question to that.
Yeah.
So just very, very basic. So when we talk about halachos versus mitzvos, halachos are the different like parameters for each particular mitzvah, but they all come under the heading of a single mitzvah.
Yeah, that's how I would characterize them. Yeah.
Okay. And does it matter how many, when people say that something counts as a mitzvah or not, that could either mean count towards taryag or possibly just, is this a mitzvah or not a mitzvah altogether?
So the short answer to your question is about why it matters is the Rambam says that because the Bahag mess people up, then the Torah is like a sealed book. And that's why the Rambam felt that it was necessary to devote all the years to writing. I don't know how long it took him to write the Sefer Mitzvos, to write this whole book, because he says you can't understand Torah unless you get the idea straight of what a mitzvah is. Now, why is that? Like you could say, I mean, to me, it's like, okay, I mean, doesn't really matter, you would think like it doesn't really matter as long as you know what the halachos are, and as long as you know what is d'oraisa and what's d'rabbanan, then who cares if it's one of taryag or not. Rambam held differently, and I think just to give you a hint as to why it might be important is, let's take the rule number one. If you thought that all d'rabbanans were on par with d'oraisas, it will distort your idea of what the primary system is. So that's why the Rambam wants you very clear on what comes from Hashem and what is d'Rabbanan, and you don't just lump them into one category. Or let's say, for example, the Rambam says another one of his rules is you don't count the reasons for a mitzvah as one of taryag. Okay, so for example, it says by the Arayos, okay, I don't have a handy example to illustrate this. So, the Rambam, I'm just saying the Rambam, I'm not answering your question. I'm saying that the Rambam says, if you don't understand what a mitzvah is, then you have a fundamentally flawed understanding of what the Devar Hashem is. And that's going to mess up your relationship to Torah to the point where the Torah is like a sealed book to you. Okay, and that's why the Rambam wrote this book.
Okay, well, intuitively makes sense, but it was just good to have you start out. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad you asked the question. Okay, so now the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the Rambam has his list of the 14 principles in the Sefer Mitzvos, but then he writes a paragraph or a little bit more on every mitzvah. But the question is, what is the Rambam doing in writing those paragraphs? So he says as follows. He says, in the Hakdama to the Sefer Mitzvos, he says, my objective in this composition is not to spell out the specific laws of any mitzvos, because that's what he's going to do in the Mishnah Torah, but merely to count them. And if I do explain something about them at the time I enumerate them, I will merely explain it by way of explaining the name of the mitzvah. Okay, Perush Hashem, the term or the name of the mitzvah, so that it will be known what this positive or negative commandment is and what the name applies to. Okay, so for example, if I tell you there's a mitzvah of Kriyas Shema, you and I know what that means, okay? But if you take that statement literally, there's a mitzvah of reading, listen, right? That's what Kriyas Shema means, reading, listen. So a person who is new to mitzvos is going to be like, what does reading listen mean? So the Rambam in the Sefer Mitzvos says, Kriyas Shema means reading the three parshios of Shema, V'haya'im Shemoah, and Vayomer twice a day in morning and evening. Okay, and he's not going to explain all the halachos. So just say Kriyas Shema means that. Okay, or let's say, for example, if I say the mitzvah of the Arba Minim, okay, the mitzvah of the 4 species. So what does that mean? So he'll say it's a mitzvah to take a citron, a palm frond, myrtles, and brook willows, and pick them up for all 7 days of the Chag HaSukkos in the Mikdash, or on day 1 outside. Okay, so he's not going to give you enough details to know all the halachos, but just to know what the mitzvah refers to. Okay, like a dictionary definition almost. Okay, so with that introduction, this is what he writes about the mitzvah of lo selech rachil b'yamecha. Do not go as a gossiper among your people. He says, I'm going to read it in the Hebrew because it's short. Now, Ron wrote the Sefer Mitzvos in Arabic. Okay, so I'm reading a Hebrew translation. Ha'azhara shuhus harnu. This is the prohibition that we've been commanded al ha-Rechilus, regarding Rechilus. V'hu amru yisale, and this is what the sages explain means. Lo selech rachil b'macha. Sorry, this is what God says. Don't walk as a gossiper. Amru, the sages say, lo tehe rach devarim lezeh v'kasha lezeh. Do not be soft with words to this person and harsh to this person. Okay, so that's his first dictionary definition of Rechilus. Okay, very different from Rashi. Okay, then davar acher, another explanation from Chazal is lo tehe kerochel. Do not be like a merchant. Matin devarim v'holech, who takes his wares and goes, okay, from one person to another. So here he seems to be emphasizing the merchant definition, okay, of taking your things and going and traveling, okay, nothing about spying here. And then he mentions uvichlal lav zeh, and included in this ha'azhara is the prohibition al hotza'as shemra, is the prohibition against slander, okay, and that's all he says, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to construct a definition of Rechilus from the Rambam's statements about it. Okay, but this is his first. These are his first statements. Okay, so now we're not going to analyze this yet. Let's go to the Mishnah Torah now. Okay, and I typed this all out in English. So Mishnah Torah in Sefer Hamada, Hilchos Deos, chapter 7. Okay, is the primary place where he talks about Lashon Hara. He says, Hamaragel b'chavero, one who, now I translated this, one who reports on his fellow, because I felt like in English, if you say one who spies on his fellow, in English, spying has the implication of watching, but does not have the implication of saying things. So I'm saying one who reports on his fellow, which implies that you're going there in order to spy on stuff and then going in and telling it to someone. Okay, so one who reports on his fellow, over below sase, transgresses a negative commandment. Shneimar, it says, do not go as a gossiper among your people. The afal pi she'ein lokin alav zeh, even though you don't get lashes on this. Now, why don't you get whiplashes on Rechilus? We might have talked about this on Wednesday night. Anyone know? It's a universal principle. Yeah, tomorrow.
Maybe it has to have like some sort of action.
Okay, correct. So there's a principle that you don't get malchus, you don't get whiplashes on a lav she'ein bo ma'aseh, on a lo saseh that does not involve an action. And in halacha, dibur is lav kamaisa dami. That speech is not, for the most part, speech is not considered an action. Action means like a bodily action. So even though there are not lashes on this, which might lead you to believe that this is not severe, avum gadolhu. Nevertheless, it is a severe iniquity. The gorem laharog nefashos rabos misrael, and it causes the killing of many souls from Israel. Lakach, and that's why nismach lo, it is juxtaposed to lo sa'amod odam reacha. So again, in the pasuk here says, don't go as a gossip monger among your people and do not stand over the blood of your fellow. Halachically, what is the issur of lo sa'amod odam reacha? What is that prohibiting you to do? Or what would it be to stand over the blood of your fellow? Yeah, Tamar?
I'm not sure, but maybe it's like seeing someone's going to die and not helping them.
That's exactly it. Okay, so I'm going to read it from Rashi, even though this is, I think, unanimous. Lo samad adam reacha liros b'misaso, seeing that he is dying, and you can save him. Like you see someone drowning in a river and you can swim. Or list in Vainalav, or a wild animal or thieves like bandits are attacking him, and you know how to defend him. Okay, so he's saying, so that's what the actual issur is. But then the Rambam is saying, quoting Chazal, presumably, that the reason why these two psukim are there is because violating lo selech rachil causes people to die, and therefore, I think the Bechor Shor says, I put the source at the bottom because I don't think I was going to use it. The Bechor Shor, I think, says, yeah, lo selech rachil b'mecha ki az lo samad odam re'acha. Do not go as a gossiper, because then you will not stand over the blood of your friend. Im telech rachil az tamod. And if you do go as a gossiper, then you will be standing over the blood of your friend. In other words, he's treating standing over the blood of your friend not as a mitzvah, but as a like a consequence of it's telling you about the consequence of Rechilus. Okay, and then the Rambam says, Say ulaman ma ir ladoeg ha'adomi. Go and learn what happened to Doeg the Edomi. Now, I've read this Rambam for many years, and this is the first year that I actually went and learned what happened to Doeg. Okay, so we're going to do that together in a little while, but I want to read his definition of Rechilus and then Lashon Hara first. Okay, because you don't know what Rechilus is yet. Okay, so he now defines it. Ezehu Rachil. Oh, I do want to point out one thing though, by the way. Okay, spoiler alert: lots of people die as a result of Doeg. But the Rambam is not saying that that's the proof. Okay, Doeg happened like 400 years after Matan Torah. So he's saying in the Torah itself, it's saying that Rechilus causes deaths. Okay, and he's saying go and learn what happened to Doeg because that's going to be an example of this. But he's not saying it causes death because of Doeg. So one of the things we have to understand is how is Rechilus a lethal mitzvah, a lethal violation? I mean, okay. So then he says, Ezehu Rachil, what is considered a gossip monger? Zeshuhu toin devarim. Now okay, there's two, Rambam wrote the Mishnah Torah not in biblical Hebrew, but in rabbinic Hebrew. And in rabbinic Hebrew, ta'an, like means both to carry and to claim. So like if you hear people say like, I made a taina, okay, that's like the Ashkenazic bastardization of the word ta'ana, which means to make a like a legalistic claim, okay? So I don't know if the Rambam is using this in rabbinic Hebrew or in biblical Hebrew. So I like hedged my bets and said one who loads up on claims, okay? The holech mizel lezeh and goes from this person to that person. The Omer, and he says, kach v'kach amar ploni, such and such was said by so and so. Kach v'kach shamati al ploni, such and such I heard about so and so. Af al pi shehu omer emes, even though he is saying truth, harizeh machari v'sa'olam, then this person is destroying the world. Now, if we stopped here, okay, it would seem like the definition of Rechilus is insanely broad, okay? For example, if I ask Ayala Fader, Ayala, how was your Pesach? And she says, Pesach was great. And then I go to Esti and say, oh yeah, I talked to Ayala, she said she had a great Pesach. Oh no, am I in violation of Rechilus? You know, or even worse, if I say, yeah, Rav Pesach said a nice idea in shiur, is that Rechilus? Or if I quote the Rambam and say, oh, the Rambam said that you should believe in God, then is that like, you know, so like clearly there have to be some parameters to Rechilus here. It's not just if you say so-and-so said something, okay, or I heard such and such about so-and-so, you know, it's clearly not like automatically Rechilus. And then I was doing this in my Rambam shiur yesterday, and one of the guys said, well, how do you know that that's not the case? The answer is because that's insane. Okay, like you don't need a raya that's not the case. Okay, so
because I'll do it.
Yeah, because I'll do it, right? I mean, look, there's statements, you know, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Oh no, that's Rechilus. I can't quote Torah. You know, like it's insane, right? So there have to be some parameters here. But the question is, what are those parameters? And again, we have clues that the Rambam says you are toin devarim v'holech mizel lezeh. You're loading up on claims and going from one person to another. Okay, we have the Lashon of Meragel, spying, okay, which the Rambam, by the way, you know, if he didn't use that word, you would think that he's not agreeing with Rashi at all, because he's depicting the Rachel as a merchant. He's using that same Lashon. He says, Zeshu toin devarim, which is the same thing he says, Kirochel matin devarim, like a merchant who goes and you know, takes his wares, okay? And we also have the hint that it's Machriv the Olam, that it destroys the world. And we have the hint that it is Gorim Laharug Nefashos Rabus Misrael. You know, and it's Telech, it's walking. Okay. But we need a definition. That's really what I want to get today. Okay. To define Rechilus. Oh, and we also have that it's true. Okay. That we're not talking about falsehood yet. Okay. So our big question here is, what is Rechilus? Okay. But now let's go to the next category. Okay, yesh avon gadol mizeh ad me'od. There is an iniquity that is much, much worse than this one. V'hu bichlal lavzeh. It's included in this one, meaning that in the count of the Tariag mitzvos, this is not a separate los aseh. Okay, it is included in this one. I think there are people who say that Lashon Hara is a separate los aseh. Okay, v'hu Lashon Hara. Okay, that's called evil speech. V'hu hamasaper bignus chavero. Someone who speaks degradingly about his fellow, afal pisha amar emes, even though it is true. Okay, So that's Lashon Hara. That one's actually easy, okay, which is speaking of the degradation of your friend. Obviously, we have tomorrow's questions of like, what are the parameters of this? But at least we know that it's speaking degradingly. But this makes our Rechilus problem harder, right? Because you might be tempted to say that Rechilus is speaking true words that are degrading. But the fact that no, Lashon Hara is degrading means that Rechilus is what? Neutral? We can't say it's neutral because then that's insane. So like, what is this gray area between like giving a neutral factual report versus speaking degradingly? Okay, that's what we have to narrow down. Okay, aval ha'omer sheker, but one who speaks falsely, nikra moti shem ra al chavero nikra. He is called someone who slanders his friend. Okay, so I actually made a diagram, which I'm going to show the people who can see. Okay, this is not going to help the people with audio. When I taught this in high school, because I'm a very visual person, I made a diagram. Let me see if I can find it. I opened it recently. Yeah, Lashon Hara overview. Oh, so I must have gone over this in Lomdeha because it says March 4th, 2020. Or maybe I did this in some other context. Okay, so this is what the diagram. Oh yeah, I did it as part of the mitzvah of the day. Okay, this is what it looks like in my mind. Okay, you have, and I'll describe it for people who are listening to this on audio. Okay, you have in, I don't know what color would you call that, maroon, Rechilus, gossip, which is true. Now we have to define what gossip is. Okay, then inside that category, in a more vibrant shade of red, you have Lashon Hara, negative speech, which is true. And then within that category, you have a more vibrant form of red, which is Motzi Shem Ra, negative speech, which is false. Okay, and then outside of all this, we're going to have another category, which we probably won't get to today, which is, this is actually definitely maroon, okay, which is Avak Lashon Hara, which is called the dust of Lashon Hara, which is related but not as severe. Yeah, Tamar?
Just to understand the diagram, these look like to me like they're supposed to be concentric. Is it that all Motzi Shem Ra is Lashon Hara?
Okay, so it's concentric in the sense that they're all within the lotase. So, and they're more and more severe violations of the lotase. So I guess it's not concentric in the sense of like everything is included in the category, but like the way I view it is like the core, like the worst form of this lotase is the Moti Shem Ra, you know, and then like, but these other things are included. So it's not exactly concentric. I think that's why I use trapezoids instead of circles, because I didn't want people to think that it's
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I made this diagram a long time ago. Yeah. Okay. So those are the things. Now, so again, our major task here is to define Rechilus, because I think Lashon Hara is fairly self-explanatory, even though we're going to go into the parameters. Motzi Shem Ra is definitely self-explanatory, making up, lying in a negative way about people. And then this last category, which is not really a category of violation, it's really a category of person, of a Baal Lashon Hara, but someone who is a master of Lashon Hara. Zeh sheyoshev ve'omer, this is someone who sits and says, Kach v'kach asa ploni, such and such was done by so-and-so. Kach v'kach hayu avosav, so-and-so's parents are such and such. Kach v'kach shamati alav, I heard such and such about so-and-so. V'omer devarim shel ganai, and he says degrading things. Al zeh hakasav omer, regarding this, the pasuk says, and this is the pasuk we're doing in Tehillim on Wednesday nights, join us next week at 8. Yachreis Hashem kol sifsei halachos lashem adveres gadolos. May Hashem cut off all smooth-talking lips, a tongue that speaks haughtily. Okay, so that's a different category here. Okay, and the question is, what is the definition? Okay, I like to joke that you see from here that you have to be sitting down. As long as you're standing up, then you're not Baal Lashon Hara. Okay, that's obviously not the case. So Baal Lashon Hara we're gonna have to define as well. Okay, so the question is, what is Rechilus? Okay, and actually, what I'm going to do is let me just put this on the screen here. I actually have to pause the recording for 1 second. Okay, so what did you guys think or say?
No, actually, I asked for a little review because I had missed a point, so we didn't move further.
Okay, so anyone have a tentative definition of Rechilus based on what the Rambam is saying here?
Right. It kind of sounds like, and I'm also drawing this from our little summary right now, that maybe it has to do with just making somebody else into a topic of conversation.
Okay, good. In fact, if you look at my, let me just go back to that PowerPoint. I think I have this on the PowerPoint. If you look at my So again, this is we'll call it my pre-Doeg understanding of Rechilus before I looked into the story. So I raised the question, what is gossip? And I gave two dictionary definitions of gossip and then my own definition. Okay. So the first dictionary definition I got from Google, wherever Google got it from: casual or unconstrained conversation or reports about other people, typically involving details that are not confirmed as being true. Okay, so that's a good definition of gossip in English. You could read that into the Rambam, because you could say that afal pisha omer emes, even though it's true, does not mean that it is confirmed to be true. Like, it could still be speculative, you know? You could say that, okay? Then Wikipedia says idle talk or rumor about the personal or private affairs of others. Okay, I like that. I like that angle as well. And my definition is kind of a synthesis, but let's see what I wrote then. Sharing reports, okay, so-and-so said such and such about so-and-so, about other people's personal or private lives for the sake of entertainment. And I use entertainment here. Maybe there's a better word than entertainment, but like not for a specific like constructive purpose, but just like for pleasure, okay? Yeah. So that was my pre-Doeg definition, okay? But now what we're going to do, now what we're going to do is we're going to do what the Rambam says to do, which is to go and learn what happens to Doeg, okay? And I think this will give us a clearer idea. But before we do, I want to point out, by the way, you notice what does not show up in the Rambam's Mishnah Torah definition. This thing of rach devarim lazeh v'kasha lazeh, soft with this person and harsh with that person. And to be honest, I have not seen anyone mention that as a quality of Rechilus. Okay, so maybe it does show up in the Mishnah Torah and we just aren't seeing it, but I think we should keep that in mind. Okay, because remember, the Sefer HaMitzvos is the dictionary definition of the term lo selech rachel. Okay, so let's go to Sefer Shmuel. So this is in 2 chapters in Shmuel. It's chapters 21 and 22. And for the sake of what do you call expediency, I omitted everything from the chapters that I do not think is directly relevant to our topic. Maybe you can argue that we should have gone over it, but we're just going to read the pshat here. Okay, and I'm going to read a translation, which is a combination of Robert Alter and our scroll and my own translation. Okay, so the context here is David Melech had been chosen by Shmuel to be king. Shaul was deposed from his kingship, but he was still functioning as king. And Shaul betrayed David in numerous ways, and David makes a pact with Yonasan and is told that Shaul was out to kill him. So David is fleeing for his life from Shaul. Okay, and this is in chapter 20 is when he first flees, and then seen. Okay, here we go. Shmuel 21, pasuk 2. David came to Nov, to Achimelech HaKohen, and Achimelech trembled to meet David and said to him. Now, this word vayecharad means to tremble. Someone else, one of the other Mefarshim said it's to he hastened to meet him. Okay, but either way, he said to him, "Why are you alone and no one is with you?" Okay, so the analogy here would be if pretend you're in your house and then suddenly you hear a knock on the door and you open the door and it's Kamala Harris, okay, and she says, "Can I come in?" Your first thought would be, "What are you doing here? You're the vice president, and like, where's your entourage?" Okay, so David Melech was the second in command to Shaul. He was the general. Okay, and not only that, he was married into the royal family. He married Michal Bas Shaul, and he's alone. He's showing up to Achimelech at Achimelech's Makom Avoda. Okay. So David said to Achimelech HaKohen, "The king has charged me with a mission and said to me, 'Let no one know a thing of the mission on which I send you and with which I charge you.' Thus, I informed my attendants to be at a certain secret place." Okay. Now, why is he saying this? Obviously, because he doesn't want anyone who's connected with Shaul to know that he's fleeing for his life from Shaul. And it's a very good lie because he's telling Achimelech, "Oh yeah, the king sent me on a secret mission." So that's going to ensure that Achimelech doesn't spill the beans either. Okay. So yeah. So then he says, "And now what do you have at hand? 5 loaves of bread, give them to me, or whatever there is." Okay. So he's asking for food. All right. So I'm sure that's also a little weird about why David doesn't have food, but now they have this whole discussion, and I'm only mentioning it because it's going to come up later on. And
quick question. This
Say it
was
again?
like not known. This was not known that Shaul was trying to kill him, and that's why he couldn't say, or he didn't want to say because he didn't want Shaul to know that he was onto him.
Who's the he that you're talking about? David?
Sorry, yes, David.
Yeah, David knows that Shaul is going to kill him because Yonatan told him.
But he doesn't want anyone else to know what.
He doesn't want anyone else to know that he's fleeing for his life from Shaul, because then they're gonna tell Shaul where he is, and they're gonna kill him. Because Shaul is the king.
He's assuming that if anyone has this information, then they're gonna rat him out.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And the Kohen answered David and said, I have no common bread at hand, solely consecrated bread. If only the lads have kept themselves from women. And David answered the Kohen and said to him, why, women are restricted to us, as in times gone by when I went out to war, and the lads' gear was consecrated, even if it was a common journey, and how much more so now the gear should be consecrated. And the Kohen gave him what was consecrated, for there was no bread except the showbread that had been removed from before Hashem to be replaced with warm bread when it was taken away. Okay, now the reason I read that fast is there's a whole to-do in the Mefarshim about what was this bread. If it's Kodesh, how can David eat it? If it's the showbread, why is he giving him this? What did Achimelech think? Was David sick? Did he think it was a pikuach nefesh thing? Is there some sort of heter? What's with all this tuma? I'm not interested in that, and I'm assuming it's not relevant for our purposes. Okay, but there's a whole thing. If you're interested, you can look there. Okay, then we get what I believe in literary terms is called Chekhov's gun, which is Anton Chekhov, I guess, I don't know which book or story. He has a scene where there's a gun on the table. And then, like, much later on in the story, then the gun becomes relevant because it's used to kill somebody, right? So it says here, one pasuk, and there was a Visham ish me'avdei Shaul. There was a man of the servants of Shaul, Bayomahu, on that day, Ne'asar lifnei Hashem, who was detained or waiting before Hashem. Ushmo Doeg ha'adomi. His name was Doeg the Edomite. Abir haroim, the chief of the herdsmen, Asher LaShaul, who were Shaul's. Okay, so plain shot. So first of all, this person was Jewish. Okay, he was called an Edomite because he was from Edom. All right, but he was not like an actual Edomite. And plain shot, he was a chief herdsman. Okay, but there are Mefarshim who I said here, which we're not going to go into, who say that he was like a prominent official. Okay, and some say he was like a chief herdsman, and herdsman is being used as a figure of speech to mean like someone who is in charge of a flock, like of like people. Okay, Chazal say that Doeg was a huge Talmid Chacham, and even some of the Pshat Mefarshim say they indicate this. For example, he says, Radak says, Kiba Sham Lizboach Imanashim Mecherim. Doeg went to I forgot exactly where they were going, but this was a place of avoda. So he went there to do bring sacrifices with other people. V'halchu chavirav, and his friends left, his fellows left. V'hu nishar acharehem, and he remained afterwards. Lihis palel o lizboach. He went afterwards to daven. He stayed to daven or to give other korbanos. V'razal pirshu Chazal say otzer atmo lifnei ohel moe lasok b'torah. He detained himself in front of the Olmo to be involved in Torah. Upirsh Abir Aroim, and Chazal say that the head of the herdsmen, Shaya Av Beistin, is that he was the second in command in the Sanhedrin. V'haya V'zehu Derek Drash. That's just a drash, okay? But they're showing that like he was a righteous, wise person. Okay, Metzudas David says he's boded by Avodas Hashem. He was there to be in seclusion in Avodas Hashem. Okay, so Doeg is not a low life. He is a high life. I don't know what we call it. Someone who's like someone who is a prominent guy and Talmid Chacham involved in Torah. Okay, but then we get back to what happens. And David said to Achimelech, "Don't you have here at hand a spear or a sword? For neither my sword nor my gear have I taken with me, for the king's mission was urgent." Now, why does he really want a weapon? To defend himself in case someone is going to attack him on behalf of Shaul. But he's, again, lying to Achimelech, saying, no, I couldn't take my, this is so urgent that I couldn't take my sword with me. And the Kohen said, the sword of Goliath HaPlishti, whom you struck down in the valley of the Terebinth, here it is, wrapped in a cloak behind the ephod. If you would take this for yourself, take it, for there's none other but it hereabouts. And David said, there's none like it, give it to me. Now, this is a little cryptic, okay? Plain pshat is David Melech asked for any sword, and Achimelech said, oh, yes, behind the ephod, and here it is. If you want it, you could take it, and David takes it, okay? But there is this phrase, acharei ha'ephod, behind the ephod, which Rashi says is, achar shesha'alu b'urim v'tumim. After David inquired of the Urim V'Tumim were behind the ephod, okay, behind the breastplate of the Kohen, and you would inquire of the Kohen Gadol about certain things that are relevant to the nation, okay, about going to war, about communal needs. The Targum also translates it that way. Basar desha'ile be'efoda, not behind the ephod, but after he asked him about matters of the ephod. Now, why is he saying this? Because later on, Doeg is going to say that David inquired of the ephod. Okay, and the problem is that the pasuk doesn't explicitly say that. So let's go with Rashi now, because even though it's not the simplest reading of the psukim, it does seem to be pshat, which is that David asked for a sword, then he asked for bread, then he asked for the sword, and then he asked him some question through the ephod, okay, through the Urim V'Tumim, and okay, so that's the pshat. Okay, so now the parak goes on, but we're skipping that because I don't think it's relevant to our topic. Okay, now we switch scenes to Shaul HaMelech. Okay, now at this point, the only background you need is Shaul wants to kill David, and this is also when Shaul is already afflicted with his mental illness. Okay, and I'm going to read this. Robert Alter, whose translation is academic but also literary, notes that this sounds like a madman, and I'm going to read it that way. Okay. You'll see why. It's he says, and Shaul heard that David was discovered and the men who were with him. And Shaul was sitting in Gibeah under the tamarisk on the height, his spear in his hand, and all his servants poised in attendance upon him. And Shaul said to his servants poised in attendance upon him. Okay, here we go. Listen now, you Benjaminites. Will the son of Yishai give every one of you fields and vineyards? And will he make every one of you captains of thousands and captains of hundreds? That all of you should have conspired against me, and none revealed to me when my son made a pact with the son of Yishai, and none of you was troubled for my sake to reveal with me, and thy son is set up with my servant to lie and wait against me on this very day. It's this one long run-on paranoid sentence, okay, where he's like accusing everyone of like betraying him, And again, it's according to the psukim. The Abravanel literally says that he was suffering from clinical depression, and that's a whole sugya also about the mental illness of Shaul. But it shows, okay, he's saying like, why didn't you guys like tell me that you guys are in cahoots with David? Okay, here we get to the important pasuk. Vayan Doeg ha'adomi, and Doeg the Edomite answered, V'hu nitzav al avdei Shaul, he was poised in attendance with Shaul's servants. Vayomar, and he said, Ra'isi es ben Yishai ba nove el ha'achimelech ben Achituv. I saw the son of Yishai coming to Nov to Achimelech, the son of Achituv. Vayishal lo bar Hashem, and he inquired of Hashem. That's talking about through the Urim V'Tumim. V'tzeda nasan lo, and he gave provisions to him. Okay, Achimelech gave provisions to David. Ve'es cherv Goliath haplishti nasan lo, and he gave him the sword of Goliath the Plishti. Okay. That's the only statement that Doeg makes. Okay, so we're going to analyze it later, but let's see what happens. Okay, so we're going to skip them all of them for now. And the king sent to summon Achimelech, son of Achituv, and all his father's household, the Kohanim who were in Nov, and they all came to the king. And Shaul said, listen now, son of Achituv. And he said, here I am, my lord. And by the way, Ben Achituv is a degrading way to call the Kohen. Okay, it'd be like in English, if you call someone just by their last name. Okay, like if you call like someone, call one of your Rebbeim by just their last name. That's disrespectful. So that's what he calls him. And Shaul said, why did you conspire against me, you and the son of Yishai, giving him bread and sword and inquiring of God for him, so that he set up to lie and wait for me against this very day? Okay, so he just accuses him of conspiring with David. Okay, now, what was the actual, what would you say if you were Achimelech and Shaul accused you of this? I guess Tamar.
I don't know if any of the people who spoke wanted to try again, but if not, I could say. Okay.
Yeah.
Like David tricked him, basically. Like it wasn't his fault.
Right. It wasn't his fault. And more than that, what did Achimelech think he was doing?
Serving. He was helping Shaul.
Serving the king, right? I'm fulfilling this is the king's general. Okay, and and he says I'm on a secret mission from the king, so I'm helping him and I'm helping the king. Okay, so that's essentially what Achimelech says. He says, oh, by the way, sorry, one important point here. Why does Shaul highlight inquiring of God for him? So Rashi says, Vayishal lo belokim asisu melech. Shaul is saying you treated him as king. Because an ordinary person is not allowed to ask of the Urim V'Tumim. Okay, the king can ask of the Urim V'Tumim. And now it's true that someone who's asking on behalf of the whole community can ask for the through the ephod as well. But Shaul is already framing this as you're treating him as the legitimate king because you're giving him this service of inquiring about the Urim V'Tumim, which only the king can do. Okay, so Achimelech answered the king and said, and who of all your servants is like David, loyal and the king's son-in-law and captain of your palace guard and honored in your house? Okay, so he's saying, yeah, David is like your most loyal servant. Of course I'm helping him because I want to help you. Did I this day for the first time inquire for him of God? Far be it from me. Now, that's a difficult statement. Did I for the first time ask this day? So Rashi interprets that as Zeh Yamim Rabim Shetzorach HaTzibor. Zeh Yamim Rabim. I fielded questions to the Urim V'Tumim from him for many days. Shetzorach HaTzibor. This is a need of the community. Sheminahu Moti Umevi Es Yisrael. You appointed him to be the one who leads the Jews as a general. And I asked God this question of him because of that. Chalilali, God forbid for me, God forbid that I'm rebelling against you. Yeah, so he says, yeah, far be it. Let not the king impute anything at all to his servant or to all my father's house, for your servant knew nothing of this, neither great nor small. So he's saying, yeah, I thought I was helping the most loyal servant of the king, and I didn't know anything about this. I didn't do anything wrong. Okay, but the king says, you are doomed to die, Achimelech, you and all your father's house. And what happens? And the king said to the runners poised in attendance on him, turn round and put to death the Kohanim of Hashem, for their hand too is with David, for they knew he was fleeing and did not reveal it to me. Okay, so he's now not just accusing Achimelech, he's saying all the Kohanim are in cahoots with Achimelech and with David. Okay, and the king's servants did not want to reach out their hand to stab the Kohanim of Hashem, understandably so. And the king said to Doeg, you then turn round, stab the priests. And Doeg the Edomite turned round, and it was he who stabbed the priests. And he put to death on that day 85 men who wore the linen ephod. So he killed 85 Kohanim. And he struck down Nov, the city of Kohanim, by the edge of the sword, man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and donkey and sheep, all by the edge of the sword. Now, does that remind you of anything? Man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and donkey and sheep. Yeah, Fega?
Mechias Amalek.
Mechias Amalek. And who's Mechias Amalek? Does this remind you of?
Well, the one that Shaul failed to do.
The one that Shaul failed to do, right? So I'm sure there's a lot of Torah on that as well, that Shaul really lost his kingship because he was supposed to annihilate man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and donkey and sheep, and he didn't. And then David gets chosen. And then now, as a result of Shaul trying to persecute David, then Shaul ends up ordering all these people to get killed. Okay. And then last part of the story, and one son of Achimelech, the son of Achitub, got away, and his name was Eviasar, and he fled after David. And Eviasar told David that Shaul had killed the Kohanim of Hashem. And David said to Eviasar, I knew on that day that Doeg the Edomite was there, and that he would surely tell Shaul, I am the one who caused the loss of all the lives of your father's house. Stay with me, do not fear, for whoever seeks my life seeks your life, and so you are under my guard. So David is taking the blame. Okay. So let's look at what Doeg said and try to infer here what Rechilus is. So what can you observe here about what he says? I saw the son of Yishai coming to Nov, to Achimelech, the son of Achitub, and he inquired of Hashem through the Urim V'Tumim, and provisions he gave him, and the sword of Goliath Haplishti he gave him. What do you say about this statement? What observations can you make here? Yeah, Tamar?
I think on a superficial level, it doesn't sound like he's not like putting a spin on it, you know? He's just kind of saying what happened. Okay, sounds like he's saying what happened. Okay. All right, good. Yeah, Ayala?
Also, maybe it's not necessarily like bad inherently. It's just that he knew Shaul would interpret it as bad, I guess.
Okay, right. So nothing in this statement is actually bad, or let's put it this way, to use Lashon Hara terms, none of this is gnus or gnai. None of this is degrading, okay? He's just telling facts, okay? But he definitely knows that Shaul is going to come after David for this. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so the Malbim has a good analysis of this. Unfortunately, I could not understand all of the Malbim. Okay, but I'm going to show you what I do understand, and that's going to be enough. So he says like this: Ba nov el Achimelech, hine im haya doeg magid hamase kamush haya be'emes. If Doeg had told the incident as it was actually true, as it actually happened, lo haya nitzmach shum chashad al kohanim, then there would be no suspicion that would be attached to the kohanim. Ki be'emes ba David el beis Hashem, lo el beis Achimelech. David came to the house of Hashem, to the house of worship, not to the house of Achimelech. V'doeg shama, and Doeg heard, should David amar shaholech b'shlichus hamelech. Doeg heard that David said that he came at the behest of the king. Vishuhu ra'iv, and that he was starving. Achazo bulmus. I always forget what bulmus is. Let me look it up. I always think of, when I think of bulmus, does anyone think of a U.S. president? No? Oh, this is not a modern English, Hebrew word. Okay, I always think of Teddy Roosevelt because his nickname was the Bull Moose. Bull Moose, I think, is some sort of disease, or sickness. So he had some sort of sickness, and he was starving. V'shasha'alo b'urim davar stami, and he just inquired of the urim v'tumim something generic. V'lo hodia lahakohen ikar she'laso, and he did not ask the Kohen his main question, because he told the Kohen that the king commanded him to conceal the matter. He did not ask for the sword of Goliath, rak cherev. He just said, "Can I have a sword?" And only because there was no other sword available, the king gave him the sword of Goliath. Through all of this, it was clear that the Kohen did this with absolute innocence and without knowing anything bad. Aval Doeg Lashono Kitar Malutash. Osiramiya. Doeg's tongue was like a sharp razor making deceit. Okay. And then he goes and he explains all of the 6 ways that Doeg did impose a narrative on the words of on the event of David. Okay, so for example, he says, I'm just going to do a couple examples here. Amar David ba el beis Achimelech. David came to the house of Achimelech. Shemashma uso. That implies Shabal el beis hakohen. That implies that he came to the personal home of Achimelech. Lo el beis Hashem, not to the house of Hashem where Achimelech was stationed. Okay, Ulazel lo amar el beis. Google thought I was asking it a question. Ulazelo Amar El Beis Achimelech HaKohen. That's why he also didn't say to the house of Achimelech the Kohen. Sha'az Haya Mashma Shaba Elav Mitzad Kuhunaso, because then he would imply that he came to him because of his kahuna. V'hu Hilshin Shaba Elav Mitzad Heyoso Imo Bekoshin. He slandered him by implying that he came because he's in conspiracy with David. Biyosa ben Achituv Umishpacha Zos Hema im David. And he called him Ben Achitu. Is that what he said? Yeah, he highlighted his father's house because he's saying, oh, that family is loyal to David. Okay, so it would be like if I said, I'm just going to make this up on the spot. Like if I said, okay, let's say like someone went to the police office to report a crime, okay, and he talked in the police office to Officer Krupke. Okay. So like, if I say, oh yeah, he went to the police office to talk to Officer Krupke. So I'm clearly saying that he went there. I'm saying he went to the police office and he's engaging this person as an officer of the law. But if I said, oh, he went to the office of the Krupke family, and I allowed them to imply that he went to his house and it's associated with a family that's loyal, and I'm not calling him officer. So like he's framing him in a way where it's like this is a personal guy in cahoots with David, not the king who's officiating at the house of Hashem. Yeah, see?
So just like he went to Krupke's, but just like that.
Yeah, Krupke,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay, so then the mom goes into a bunch more. Hold on a second here. Yeah, so he goes into a bunch more details here. So, for example, because I don't understand the Malbim, I don't want to misrepresent him. But as an example, he switches the order. Okay, he says that David asked about a question about the Urim V'Tumim, and then Achimelech gave him provisions and the sword. Okay, and Shaul is going to think. What is Shaul going to think that David was asking Achimelech of the Urim V'Tumim? So presumably something about how to flee from Shaul. Okay. And then, so Shaul thinks, oh, this guy, David is going to ask Achimelech from Hashem how to get away from Shaul. And then Achimelech says, here, take this bread, and here's the sword that you use to defeat your enemies. Okay. Which you asked for, right? But really, what did David do? Is he came and he said, give me food. I'm starving. He did not tell anything about why he was here. He asked a question of the ephod, which the Malbim is correctly saying was not specific, because he told Achimelech, I can't tell anybody what this mission is about. Okay. And he said, do you have a sword? And Achimelech said, yeah, this is the only one I have. Take it if you want. And he gave him this. So he is weaving a whole narrative around this story, you know, and what's the biggest omission? I know we said this right. What's the biggest omission that Doeg makes? The key fact. Yeah, Ayala?
That David said that he's on a mission from Shaul.
David said that he's on a mission from Shaul, right? So Doeg is engaging in falsehood, but not overt lies, okay? That every individual statement that he's saying is, strictly speaking, true, but he is manipulating and presenting and omitting and crafting this narrative in a way that is going to lead to destructive things, and that incriminates Achimelech and all the Kohanim. Okay, so I think that's what we get from the story. Okay, any questions about the story before we go back and try to define Rechilus? Okay, so now equipped with that in mind, let's go back to the Rambam. Okay, so the question now is, can we define Rechilus in a unified way that unifies all the notes? Okay, and the notes that we actually, let's just summarize this here. Okay, hold on, let's summarize it under here. Okay, we have notes. Okay, so notes are harsh to this, sorry, we have, okay, Rachil, sorry. Rachil equals either spy or monger, okay, who takes wares and goes from person to person, okay, spy, and this is spy is who looks for damaging reports and brings them back to people who can act on them. Okay, so that is those are the two meanings of Rachil, and the Rambam does use both terms. Okay, I'm going to include here. Oops, sorry, hold on. Rachil or, sorry, having difficult typing today. Rachil or Meragel. Okay, that's note one. We also have harsh to this one. Oh, sorry, soft to this one and harsh to that one. Soft in words to this one and harsh to that one. Okay, we also have loads up on statements. Which is so and so said such and such, or I heard such and such about so and so. Okay. We have, oh, by the way, another thing that Doeg did is, you notice first word Doeg says is ra'isi, is I saw it. Okay, which is another thing that produces credibility, and is a true statement. Okay, loads of unstatements. Causes many Israelite souls to be killed. Okay, which is why it's juxtaposed to do not stand over the blood. Okay, of your fellow. Destroys the world. Is not gnus or gnai, okay, degrading, and is true. Okay, I think those are all the notes that we need to unify here. So, so can we come up with tentative definition of Rechilus? Sorry, Rechilus. Oh, yeah, there's obviously there's the other note, okay, is what Doeg did. Okay, what Doeg did. Yeah. Okay, so what can we define Rechilus as now, based on all this? And we don't have to get rid of what we said before. This could be building on what we said before. It's tricky, right? Yeah, Ayala?
So I don't have like a full definition, but
Sure.
One aspect of it seems, is like presenting the truth, presenting some of the truth in a distorted way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Okay, good. I like that. Yeah, I'm going to type that out here. Presenting some of the truth in a distorted way. Yeah, Fega?
So this definition isn't my own, but like it's either the Chafetz Chaim or like how the Art Scroll interprets the Chafetz Chaim, but it translates Rechilus as information that will cause ill feelings between two parties. Interesting.
Okay, information that will cause ill feelings between two parties. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say some tentative things myself. Again, I'm not fully, I don't have it fully clear. Okay, but what I would say is like this. I'm going to just try it out. Okay, we'll see what happens. Okay, is selectively presenting information, true information, which lends itself to a destructive, harmful narrative. Okay. And Kal V'chomer, presenting, like weaving, like deliberately weaving such information into a harmful narrative, knowingly and deliberately. Yeah. So I think that is what gossip is. So that's why the Rambam can say it's not lignai. It's not like you are, if it's lignai, if you are trying to degrade someone, then that would be Lashon Hara. Okay. Even though it's true. But if you're just like saying this, then like that's and letting the other person put together the pieces, like what Doeg did here, or if you are like suggesting it, then like that would be that'd be Rechilus, and it is a fine line. Yeah, Tamar.
Just to clarify the definition to make sure I understand what you're saying. When you say harmful, do you mean harmful to the party that's being spoken about?
I do mean that for now. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I want to limit it to that, but that I definitely am including that. Okay. Yeah, Ayala.
So just a thought about like in the story what happened. I think it's interesting that after the Shaul servants didn't want to kill a Kohanim, he called on Doeg, and then like kind of Doeg had to say yes. Like he kind of trapped himself into this. Right. So I think it's like an interesting mishlei.
Okay, good. So I think that is possibly what the Rambam means by where do you say it? Gorim lahrog nafashos rabos mi'Yisrael. Okay, that if you are the bearer of the narrative, that might, as Ayala said, like mishleachly, rope you into the narrative that you create and cause you to suffer or to do things that you wouldn't have ordinarily done. The most the craziest thing, the most severe of things being destroying actual lives. So like that is a that definitely happens. Okay. Okay, so let's leave that as our tentative definition. What I'd like to do in the remaining 12 minutes, let's say, is read through the rest of the halachos of Lashon Hara. And I know there are going to be a flood of questions, but like I said, I want to get the facts today so that we can then go back and get the ideas next time. Now, I did not finish typing all the translations of this, so let's just see here. Okay, and there are not that many halachos. Okay. Amru Chacham, and again, we also I realized we did not define what a Baal Lashon Hara is yet, but let's just let's just get the facts here. Okay, Amru Chachamim, the sages said, Shalosh aviros nifraim min ha'adam ba'olam hazeh ve'in lo chelik l'olam haba. There are 3 sins that a person is punished for in this world, and he doesn't have a chelik in olam haba. Avodah zara, gilui rayos, and shvichus damim. The big 3 really categories, not individual sins. Lashon hara keneged kulam. Lashon hara is equal to all of them. V'ora amru chachamim. The chachamim also say kol ha'mesaper b'lashon hara kilu kafar be'ikar. Anyone who speaks lashon hara, it is as if he denied the fundamental principle of God's existence. Shneimar asher amru lilashoninu nagbir sefasenu itanu mi adon lanu. Like we read in the Tehillim that we're doing Wednesday night. Those who say with our tongues we will prevail, our lips are with us. Who is the Lord over us? The Od amru chachamim. The chachamim also say shlosha lashon hara horeges. Lashon hara kills 3 people. Ha'omro v'amakablo v'zesh omrin alav. The person who says it, the person who accepts it, and the person who it is said about. V'amakablo yeser min ha'omro. And the person who accepts it, it kills more than the person who says it, which is counterintuitive. Sorry, the one who accepts it, more than the one who says it. Yeah, that's counterintuitive. Okay, now he gets into avak lashon hara. There are yesham devarim shein avak lashon hara. There are things that are the dust of lashon hara. Ketzad, how so? So there are, I think, 4 subcategories. Mi yomar leploni shiye kamos shuata. Who would have said that so and so would be like he is now? Okay. Uma ushasku miploni any rota lahodia ma ira umahaya, or like shut up about so and so, I don't want to tell you what happened. Okay, and other things like that. Okay, so this is like when you are making a statement that is overtly good or at least not bad, but you are implying badness. Okay, so it's like indirect lashon hara. Right. 2, hamasaper betovas chaver bifnei sonaav. One who says good things about his fellow in front of his enemies. Harizeh avak lashon hara. This is the dust of lashon hara. Okay, why? Shezeh gorem lahem shisaper bignuso, because this will cause them to speak badly about him. Regarding this, Shlomo said, Mavarach re'ehu b'kol gadol b'boker, one who blesses his friend loudly in the morning, in the early morning, klala techashev lo. It will be considered a sin, a curse for him. Okay, that's Mishlei 27:14. Shemitoch tovaso, because from his goodness will come about his badness. Okay, this is an often misquoted thing I've heard from high school students. There will always be a high school student who says, I heard it's lashon hara if you say something good about somebody. And the answer is no. It's lashon hara if you say good things about somebody in front of their enemies, because that will prompt the enemies to speak badly. And the classic example of this is in high school, where let's say you are a student who likes a particular teacher and you know that your classmate hates the teacher. So you say, oh, I love so-and-so as a teacher. You're going to prompt them to say, oh yeah, well, and then they're going to start saying the bad stuff. So this is like something where, again, you're saying something good, but it is causing others to speak lashon hara about that person. Okay. That's category B. Category C, copyright. One who speaks lashon hara in a joking or frivolous / like light-hearted manner. Kolomar, as if to say, that they're not speaking out of hatred. Husha Shlomo Omer, this is what Shlomo says, Kimislachlea hayora zikim chitzim v'maves, like someone who wearies himself, launching, I think it's like firebrands, arrows, and death. Okay, like someone shooting a gun, okay, at you. Kain ish rima es chavero. So is a man who deceives his fellow. V'amar, and says, I was just joking. Okay, This is Mishlei 26, 18 through 19. Okay, now, just to clarify here, again, we have to analyze this. I do not think this means like if you and your friend both have an understanding and like you can say this joke and like they enjoy it just as much as you do. This is talking about like when you make a comment that in any other context would be Lashon Hara, but you're doing it as a joke, like oh, you're so fat, like something like that. Like it's like again, maybe we're gonna find the Chofetz Chaim disagrees with this, but like I'm under the impression that like if the other person is if this is the way that you guys talk, then that's not Lashon Hara, okay? But maybe some disagree, okay? And then the last category of Avak Lashon Hara is this is the hardest one. Hamasaper Lashon Hara derech Ramayus, one who speaks Lashon Hara in a deceptive manner, namely one who speaks innocently, as if he doesn't know that this is Lashon Hara, Ella kishemamachimbo, but when they call him out on it, Omer, he says, Eini yodea she'elu masav shaploni. I didn't know that these were the actions of so and so. O shezeh Lashon Hara, or I didn't know that this was Lashon Hara. Okay, so like the example of this that I would always see in high school is like, let's say you have, let's say some girl saw a classmate get in trouble, okay, and then she goes into the lunchroom and then says, like, oh, like someone got in trouble with Mrs. Eisenman, and then someone calls her out and says like don't talk about Sally like that, and she's, oh, I didn't know it was Sally. Now the trouble with this category is, why is this not just regular Lashon Hara? So we have to analyze this. Okay, this is something that is going to need analysis. 2 more paragraphs and we'll be done. Yeah, Ayala.
Is this also if you say it to the person themselves?
That's the next category, and that's not Avak Lashon Hara. This seems to be regular Lashon Hara. Echad hamasaper b'Lashon Hara bifnei chavero o shelo b'fanav. It doesn't matter whether you speak Lashon Hara in front of your friend or not in front of him. Okay, and the implication is it's still prohibited. Okay, v'hamasaper dvarim shegormin, and one who tells things which cause im nishmu ish mi pi'ish, which if heard from one person to another, cause l'hazik chaver b'gufo b'mamono, which if heard from one person to another will cause damage to his friend in bodily or monetary damage. Sorry, will cause bodily or monetary damage to his friend, or even to afflict him or intimidate him. This is Lashon Hara. Okay, so this he has to say because this is not degrading. Okay, but let's say extreme example. Let's say like I reveal your credit card information, right? So that is Lashon Hara, even though it's not degrading. Or I say something that like makes you feel bad, even though it's not degrading. Like let's say for example, let's say you I don't know, let's say like you have a certain accomplishment, and when people talk about it publicly, it makes you feel self-conscious, and I go around talking about it and it makes you feel bad. So it's not degrading. In fact, it's praiseworthy, but it's still Lashon Hara because it brings about emotional harm. Okay, now here comes what Chofetz Chaim pounces on as the most misunderstood halacha in all the halachas of Lashon Hara. So don't run away with this without us understanding it. If these things were said in front of 3 people, okay, kvar nishma hadavar v'noda, the matter has already been heard and known. V'im siper hadavar echad min hashlosha pam acheres, And if one of those three told the matter an additional time, ein bo mishum lashon hara, there is no prohibition in this of lashon hara. V'hu shelo yiskabin lahavir hakol el, provided that he didn't intend to transmit the matter and reveal it further. Okay, so again, we're not going to analyze this time, but this is somehow saying that there is a phenomenon of public knowledge, and that under certain circumstances, it's not lashon hara to convey this if the thing was already heard publicly. Okay, but again, you can see from the way that the Rambam is saying that there are qualifications here. Okay, so we need to talk about that. And now the last sentence: Kol elu heim bale lashon hara. All these are bale lashon hara, which is difficult because the Rambam gave a definition of bale lashon hara earlier. She'asur ladur b'shchunasam, about whom it is prohibited to dwell in their vicinity. Kol shekain leishev imahim l'shmo divrei, all the more so to sit with them and listen to their words. V'lo nachtam gazar din al avoseinu b'midbar ela al lashon hara bilvad. The verdict on our forefathers in the wilderness was only sealed on lashon hara alone, and that's also difficult, obviously, because people talk about saying like they were speaking lashon hara about Eretz Yisrael, right? But that seems to be different than speaking about a person, and I don't think that's the only way to understand it. Okay, so you have now read all the halachos in the Rambam about lashon hara, and in Hilchos Deos at least. And what remains for us is to answer tomorrow's questions, or to figure out a methodology for answering tomorrow's questions. I'm going to have to decide what approach we want to take next year, but feel free to submit questions that you have on this or other questions about lashon hara that you want to take up, and then that'll help me to decide what I want to do for next time. Okay. All right. Thanks for coming, and hope this was useful as a review. Hope you got some new ideas, and looking forward to next time. Have a good Shabbos and good Chodesh.
Thank you. Shabbos.